The seeds of cruelty. The Bright Future Girls Academy was a beacon of excellence nestled in the heart of a small African town. Known for its immaculate grounds, towering classrooms, and vibrant extracurricular programs, it was every parent's dream to send their daughters there. But for all its glamour, the school had its shadows, places where power and privilege drowned out fairness, and voices like Amoka's were often silenced. Amoka was a quiet, intelligent girl with a heart full of dreams. Coming from a humble family, she had worked hard to earn her scholarship to Bright Future. Her father was a taxi driver, and her mother sold akara, crispy bean cakes, by the roadside to make ends meet. Every morning before school, Amoka would help her mother prepare the akara, her hands deftly scooping butter into sizzling oil, while her younger siblings watched in admiration. On her first day at the academy, Amoka had walked in with her neatly ironed second-hand uniform and a backpack stitched together by her mother. Her bright eyes brimmed with hope, but she soon realized that Bright Future was not the utopia she had imagined. The girls from wealthy families didn't mix with those from poorer backgrounds, and Amoka's appearance and quiet demeanor made her an easy target. The trio of troublemakers, Tomowa, Lola, and Bimbo, ruled the school halls with unmatched arrogance. Tomowa, the ringleader, was the daughter of a wealthy politician whose influence stretched across the school. Lola, a sharp-tongued girl with an eye for drama, and Bimbo, who acted more out of fear than conviction, flanked Tomowa in her every endeavor. Together, they were unstoppable, and their favorite pastime was tormenting anyone they deemed less than. From the moment Amoka entered the classroom, the trio zeroed in on her. They teased her about her uniform, whispering loudly so others could hear, "Did she get that from a charity shop?" When she answered questions in class, they rolled their eyes and made mocking gestures, drawing laughter from the room. During lunch breaks, they threw snide comments about her mother's akara business, imitating the street vendors' calls. "Do you sell akara after school, Amoka? Maybe you can bring some for us tomorrow." Lola sneered one afternoon, and Tomowa and Bimbo erupted in laughter. Amoka tried to stay quiet, focusing on her books and avoiding their piercing gazes. But her silence only fueled their cruelty. One day, the rain poured heavily as the students rushed out of their classrooms, clutching their umbrellas and bags. Amoka, carrying her books close to her chest, tried to make her way to the school gate unnoticed. But the trio was waiting. "Hey, scholarship girl," Tomowa called, her voice cutting through the rain like a blade. Amoka hesitated, hoping they would ignore her. They didn't. Before she could react, Tomowa and Lola blocked her path, while Bimbo stood behind, giggling nervously. "Are you too good to say hello now?" Tomowa smirked, stepping closer. "Or maybe you're in a rush to help your mama fry akara in the rain." "Please, I need to go," Amoka whispered, clutching her books tighter. "Oh no, you're not going anywhere," Lola said, her tone mocking. With one swift motion, she yanked the books from Amoka's hands and tossed them into a puddle. The once pristine pages were instantly soaked, ink bleeding into the water. "Why would you do that?" Amoka cried, trying to retrieve her books. But before she could bend down, Tomowa gave her a hard shove. Amoka stumbled backward, her feet slipping in the muddy water, and she fell with a splash. The sound of laughter echoed above the rain. "Look at her. The akara girl has turned into akara herself," Bimbo blurted, laughing hysterically. Amoka sat in the puddle, mud streaking her uniform and water dripping from her face. The trio walked away, their laughter fading as they disappeared into the rain. Other students passed by, some pitying her, others pretending not to notice. No one offered to help. Amoka slowly gathered her soaked books, her hands trembling. She wanted to cry, to scream, but all she could do was sit there, letting the rain mix with her tears. Her reflection in the puddle looked as defeated as she felt. But in that moment, something stirred within her, a flicker of resolve. Clutching her ruined books, she whispered to herself, "One day, I'll show them. One day, they'll see who I really am." With that promise echoing in her heart, Amoka stood up, wiped the mud from her face, and walked toward the school gate, her head held high despite the weight of the world on her shoulders, a friend in the shadows. Bright Future Girls Academy buzzed with activity as the new term began, but few noticed the arrival of a new student. Zainab, a confident and sharp-tongued girl with a reputation for speaking her mind, had just transferred from another school in a neighboring state. Her bold, no-nonsense demeanor made her stand out immediately, though she kept mostly to herself. Zainab wasn't the type to go looking for friends, but on her second day at the academy, she stumbled upon a scene that made her blood boil. During lunch, she spotted Tomowa, Lola, and Bimbo at their usual spot in the cafeteria, giggling mischievously as they hovered over an unsuspecting Amoka. Amoka, as usual, had her head down, eating her food quietly in the corner. "Oops," Lola said loudly, deliberately spilling her glass of juice over Amoka's lunch tray. "Oh no, I'm so clumsy," she sneered, earning laughter from Tomowa and Bimbo. Amoka stood up, her uniform stained with juice, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Why do you keep doing this to me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Because it's fun," Tomowa said with a smirk. "You should thank us for giving you attention." The trio turned to leave, cackling, but stopped when they noticed Zainab standing by the door, arms crossed. Her piercing gaze locked on them like a hawk. "What are you looking at?" Tomowa snapped. "Bullies," Zainab said bluntly, her voice steady and unshaken. "You should try picking on someone your own size for a change." The room went silent. Tomowa's smug expression faltered for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. "Stay out of this, new girl," she said, narrowing her eyes. "You don't know who you're messing with." "Neither do you," Zainab replied with a smirk of her own. Without another word, she walked past them and helped Amoka clean up the mess. Together, they left the cafeteria, leaving the trio fuming. As they walked to a quiet corner of the schoolyard, Amoka turned to Zainab, her voice soft. "You didn't have to do that. Now they'll come after you too." Zainab shrugged. "Let them try. I've dealt with worse." Over the next few days, the two girls began to spend more time together, bonding over their shared experiences. Zainab revealed snippets of her past, how she had been bullied in her previous school for standing up to a group of popular girls who tormented younger students. Her refusal to back down eventually led to her being unfairly expelled, as the bullies' wealthy parents had more influence than hers. "I'm not proud of everything I did," Zainab admitted one afternoon. "But if there's one thing I learned, it's that bullies only win when you stay silent." Amoka listened intently, inspired by Zainab's courage but unsure if she could be as brave. "I don't know if I can fight back the way you did," she said hesitantly. "You don't have to fight alone," Zainab replied with a reassuring smile. "We'll do it together." Meanwhile, Tomowa was scheming. Humiliating Amoka in the cafeteria had only made the new girl, Zainab, notice her, and Tomowa despised losing her grip on the school's social hierarchy. Determined to regain control, she devised a cruel plan to tarnish Amoka's reputation permanently. The midterm exams were fast approaching, and Tomowa spread a false rumor that Amoka had stolen a copy of the exam answers from the staff room. She whispered the story to a few classmates, ensuring it spread like wildfire. Soon, even the teachers were discussing it. When Amoka arrived at school the next morning, she was met with accusatory stares and whispered insults. By lunchtime, the principal's secretary had called her to the office. Nervously, Amoka walked through the hallways, her heart pounding. In the principal's office, she was confronted by Mr. Okoro, the stern-faced school principal, who demanded an explanation. "Amoka, I've been informed that you've been accused of stealing exam answers. Is this true?" "No, sir," Amoka said firmly, tears brimming in her eyes. I would never do such a thing. Before she could say more, the door swung open, and in walked Chief Oladimeji, Tomowa's father, a man whose influence and wealth carried significant weight in the school. He greeted the principal with a firm handshake and immediately turned to Amoka. Do you deny the accusations? Chief Oladimeji asked, his tone dripping with condescension. Amoka's voice faltered. I didn't. I think we've heard enough, Chief Oladimeji interrupted, turning to the principal. In cases like this, discipline is necessary to maintain the school's reputation. Mr. Okoro nodded reluctantly, and Amoka was given a warning letter that would go on her permanent record. She left the office feeling crushed, the weight of injustice pressing heavily on her shoulders. Later that evening, as the sun set over the school grounds, Amoka sat on a bench near the basketball court, clutching the warning letter in her hand. Tears streamed down her face as she replayed the events of the day. Crying won't fix anything, Zainab's voice cut through the silence. She sat down beside Amoka, her expression softening when she saw her friend's tear-streaked face. But I know what will. What's the point? Amoka muttered. No one listens to me. No one cares. I care, Zainab said firmly. And so do a lot of other people, more than you think. It's time we stop letting them walk all over you. Amoka looked at her, a spark of hope flickering in her eyes. What do you mean? Zainab leaned closer, her voice low but determined. I have a plan. If they think they can get away with this, they are wrong. We'll fight back, and this time, they'll regret underestimating you. For the first time in weeks, Amoka allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could change. Together, she and Zainab began to map out a strategy that would shake the foundations of Bright Future Girls Academy and teach the bullies that power and privilege weren't invincible. The first strike. The days following Amoka's unjust punishment were quiet but tense. She and Zainab had been working discreetly to collect evidence against Tomowa, Lola, and Bimbo. Zainab, always observant and sharp, had noticed that the trio often spoke freely in their corner of the cafeteria, assuming no one was listening. It was the perfect place to start gathering proof. Laying the trap. One afternoon, while most students were in their extracurricular activities, Zainab approached Amoka with a small recording device. This, she said, holding up the device, is how we turn their words against them. Amoka hesitated. Isn't this risky? Everything worth doing is, Zainab replied with a sly smile. Don't worry. I'll handle it. You just need to keep them distracted. The following day, Zainab positioned herself near the trio's usual cafeteria spot, pretending to be engrossed in a book. She had hidden the recorder under the table, perfectly angled to capture their conversation. Amoka, though nervous, walked past their table several times, drawing their attention and ensuring they stayed in one place long enough for Zainab's plan to work. As expected, the trio began gossiping loudly, their words dripping with malice. Tomowa bragged about how easy it was to spread the rumor about Amoka stealing the exam answers. Honestly, they believe anything I say, she said with a laugh. I could say Amoka stole the school bus, and they'd probably believe me. Lola and Bimbo laughed along, oblivious to the trap Zainab had set. The Cultural Day event. Bright Future Girls Academy was bustling with excitement as the annual Cultural Day event approached. The students were dressed in colorful traditional attire, and the school's PA system played cheerful African music to set the mood. Parents, teachers, and guests filled the main hall, eager to watch performances and celebrate the diverse cultures represented at the school. Zainab saw this as the perfect opportunity to strike. Are you sure about this? Amoka whispered nervously as they stood near the edge of the stage. Absolutely, Zainab replied, her confidence unwavering. It's time they face the consequences of their actions. When the event reached its intermission, Zainab discreetly made her way to the broadcasting room. With the recording device in hand, she connected it to the school's PA system. As the audience mingled and chatted, the speakers suddenly crackled to life. "They believe anything I say," Tomowa's voice rang out loud and clear, cutting through the noise of the hall. "I could say Amoka stole the school bus, and they'd probably believe me." The room fell silent as the recording continued, revealing Tomowa's confession about framing Amoka. Gasps echoed throughout the hall, followed by murmurs of shock and disbelief. Teachers exchanged confused glances, while students whispered among themselves. Tomowa, seated in the front row with her friends, froze. Her face turned pale as the realization hit her. She looked around wildly, trying to figure out who was behind the recording. Lola and Bimbo shrank in their seats, avoiding eye contact with anyone. The smug confidence they had always carried was gone, replaced by shame and fear. The fallout. Chaos erupted as the recording ended. Teachers hurried to restore order, but the damage had already been done. Parents demanded an explanation, and the principal, clearly flustered, tried to calm everyone down. Tomowa's father, Chief Oladimeji, stormed into the principal's office, furious. Within minutes, he had smoothed things over, using his influence to ensure that his daughter faced no official punishment. However, the social consequences were another matter entirely. In the days that followed, Tomowa's reputation took a severe hit. Students who once admired her began to distance themselves, whispering behind her back. Even her closest allies, Lola and Bimbo, seemed less confident in her leadership. For the first time, Tomowa felt vulnerable, a feeling she wasn't accustomed to. And she hated it. Amoka's inner conflict. While Zainab celebrated their small victory, Amoka felt conflicted. She appreciated Zainab's bold approach and the justice it brought, but she couldn't shake the guilt of seeing Tomowa humiliated. "I don't know if this was the right thing to do," Amoka admitted one evening as they sat under a tree near the school field. "Are you serious?" Zainab said, looking at her incredulously. "Amoka, she framed you, humiliated you, and made your life miserable. She deserves worse." Amoka nodded slowly. "I know, but isn't there a better way to handle this?" Zainab sighed, placing a hand on her friend's shoulder. "Sometimes, you have to fight fire with fire. They've been getting away with this for too long. If we don't stand up to them, who will?" Amoka didn't respond, but deep down, she felt a flicker of courage she hadn't felt before. For once, she wasn't just a victim. She was fighting back. Tomowa's vow. Late that night, as the school grounds fell silent, Tomowa sat alone in her room, fuming. She replayed the events of the day in her mind, her humiliation burning like a fire in her chest. "This isn't over," she muttered to herself, her hands clenched into fists. "Amoka and that new girl, they'll pay for this." Tomowa's mind raced with thoughts of revenge, each plan more ruthless than the last. She wasn't just angry, she was determined. And she wouldn't stop until she regained her power and made them regret ever crossing her. A dangerous game. The aftermath of the cultural day recording left Tomowa and her clique reeling. Their grip on the school was slipping, and students no longer revered them with the same fear or admiration. But if Tomowa was anything, it was relentless. She wasn't going to let her power be taken without a fight. The escalation. Tomowa and her friends took their bullying to new heights. Amoka's locker became their favorite target. They vandalized it with cruel messages like "a thief" and "go back to your Akara stand," using permanent markers. Inside, they stuffed torn pages of notebooks with scribbles mocking her family. Zainab wasn't spared either. The trio spread rumors about her expulsion from her previous school, twisting the story to make her look like a delinquent. She hacked the school's computers, Lola whispered dramatically to a group of students during lunch. She almost got arrested. The whispers grew louder each day, and even some teachers began treating Zainab with suspicion. Amoka noticed the change in her friend's demeanor. Zainab, usually confident and sharp-tongued, had grown quieter, her smiles fewer and far between. One afternoon, after finding yet another cruel note stuffed into her locker, Zainab slammed the door shut and turned to Amoka, her voice trembling with anger. "They think they can break me." "You're strong, Zainab," Amoka said softly. "But it's okay to be upset too." Zainab took a deep breath. "I never told you why I transferred here, did I?" Amoka shook her head. "I was expelled," Zainab admitted. "Not for hacking or anything ridiculous like that, but for standing up to bullies. There was a girl at my old school, Miriam. She was small, quiet, like you. The popular girls targeted her every day. I fought back for her, and when things got physical, they blamed me for starting it. Their parents were rich, so the school took their side." Amoka stared at her friend, her respect for her growing. "You were brave." Zainab shook her head. "I wasn't brave enough. I let them push me out of the school. But not this time. This time, I'm staying." Amoka's hidden talent. Inspired by Zainab's resilience, Amoka began looking for a way to contribute to their fight against the bullies. One day, while sitting alone in the school library, she picked up an old school newsletter. She flipped through its pages, noticing how students shared stories, poems, and artwork. An idea began to form in her mind. That evening, Amoka stayed up late, scribbling furiously in her notebook. She wrote about the cruelty she and others had endured, but instead of naming names, she framed her words as a call for change. Her piece was raw, honest, and powerful. The next morning, she slipped the anonymous article into the submission box for the school newsletter, signing it only as "The Voice from the Shadows." When the next issue of the newsletter was released, her column was the talk of the school. Titled, "The Hidden Scars of Bright Future Girls Academy," it painted a vivid picture of the bullying culture that had taken root in the school. Students whispered about the identity of the writer. Many resonated with the words, sharing their own experiences of being silenced or ignored. The column became a rallying cry, and for the first time, the power dynamics at Bright Future began to shift. Tomowa, Lola, and Bimbo noticed the change. Their classmates no longer laughed at their jokes or flocked to their side. Even teachers started treating them with more scrutiny. The discovery. As Amoka's column gained traction, she felt a sense of pride she had never experienced before. For once, her voice was being heard, even if no one knew it was hers. But Tomowa was determined to find out who the mysterious writer was. One evening, after most students had left for the day, she spotted Amoka in the library, furiously writing in her notebook. Curiosity piqued, Tomowa waited until Amoka left and then snuck into the library. Finding the notebook still on the desk, she flipped through its pages. Her eyes widened as she read the draft of the column, unmistakably written in Amoka's handwriting. "So it's you," Tomowa muttered, her lips curling into a wicked smile. The plot thickens. The next morning, Tomowa confronted Lola and Bimbo in the cafeteria. "I know who the writer is," she said, slamming her hand on the table. "It's that rat, Amoka." "What are we going to do?" Lola asked nervously. "We are going to silence her," Tomowa said coldly. "For good." Amoka and Zainab, unaware of the storm brewing, continued their day as usual. But Tomowa's discovery had set the stage for a dangerous game, one that would test their courage and resilience like never before: betrayal and resolve. The days at Bright Future Girls Academy were growing darker for Amoka and Zainab, even as their column gained popularity. Students whispered about the brave writer behind, a voice from the shadows, and more stories of bullying began to surface. However, the increased attention made Amoka and Zainab bigger targets for Tomowa and her clique, who were determined to silence them. A friend turned spy. Amoka and Zainab had always been careful about who they trusted, but they never suspected Chika, a classmate and occasional companion, to betray them. Chika had always hovered on the edges of Amoka's world, a kind girl who sometimes helped her with homework or joined her for lunch. Tomowa, ever the manipulative leader, saw an opportunity. She approached Chika during lunch, flashing her most charming smile. "Chika, you're such a smart girl. I've always wondered why you don't hang out with us more. We could use someone like you in our group." Chika hesitated, but the idea of being included in the popular circle was tempting. "What do you mean?" "Well," Tomowa said, leaning closer, "we've noticed you're friends with Amoka and Zainab. We just want to know what they're up to. You don't have to do much, just tell us what they talk about, their plans, that kind of thing." At first, Chika resisted. But when Lola and Bimbo chimed in, promising that she'd be invited to their outings and treated as one of them, Chika's resolve wavered. She reluctantly agreed, convincing herself it was harmless. The betrayal. Over the next week, Chika began reporting back to Tomowa, feeding her details about Amoka's writing process and Zainab's plans to gather more evidence against the bullies. She even mentioned their brainstorming sessions about exposing the school administration's favoritism toward Tomowa. Armed with this information, Tomowa set her plan in motion. During a Friday morning assembly, the entire school gathered in the main hall for announcements. The principal, Mr. Okoro, addressed the students as usual, but midway through, Tomowa raised her hand and asked to speak. "Mr. Okoro," she began, her voice trembling with feigned vulnerability, "I think it's time we address something very serious." The room fell silent. Tomowa continued, her voice rising with emotion. "There's been someone spreading lies about me and my friends in the school newsletter, making us look like monsters. I've just found out who it is." Gasps rippled through the crowd as Tomowa turned to face Amoka, who sat frozen in her seat. "It's Amoka," Tomowa declared, pointing an accusatory finger. "She's the one behind the voice from the shadows. And she's been using her writing to spread hate and lies about us." Amoka's heart sank. She looked to Zainab, who glared at Tomowa with fiery anger, but before either of them could speak, Tomowa pressed on. "She's even been planning to ruin the school's reputation by accusing Mr. Okoro and my father of being corrupt," Tomowa added, tears welling up in her eyes. "All we've ever done is try to help her fit in, but this is how she repays us, with lies." The public humiliation. Mr. Okoro, caught off guard, called Amoka to the stage. Trembling, Amoka stood before the crowd, unable to find her voice. "Amoka," the principal said sternly, "is this true? Are you the author of this column?" Amoka hesitated, her throat dry. She glanced at the sea of faces before her, some curious, some judgmental, and a few sympathetic. Finally, she nodded. "Yes," she said softly, her voice barely audible. The room erupted into whispers. Tomowa's friends began muttering loudly about how pathetic and jealous Amoka was, making sure their words carried through the hall. Zainab stood up, her voice cutting through the noise. "This is ridiculous. Amoka's been writing the truth, something you all know but are too scared to admit." "Enough," Mr. Okoro snapped, silencing the room. "Amoka, we'll discuss this in my office later. For now, you're dismissed." As Amoka left the stage, she felt the weight of every stare, every whisper. The humiliation was unbearable. The turning point. That evening, Amoka sat in the schoolyard, tears streaming down her face. She clutched her notebook, the one place where her voice had felt powerful, and wondered if it had all been a mistake. Zainab found her there, sitting under a tree. She sat down beside her friend, silent for a moment before speaking. "They got to Chika," Zainab said quietly. Amoka nodded. "I figured. I should have known better than to trust anyone. This isn't your fault, Zainab said firmly. They are scared of you, Amoka. Scared because for the first time, someone is standing up to them, and people are listening. Amoka wiped her tears. It doesn't feel like it. I'm tired, Zainab. I just want it all to stop. Zainab placed a hand on her shoulder. I get it. But if you stop now, they win. And it's not just about us anymore. What about the other students who've been bullied? What about the ones who can't fight back? Amoka looked at her friend, the fire in Zainab's eyes reigniting a spark of determination in her. What do we do? Zainab smiled faintly. We go big. No more playing small. If they want to silence us, we make sure our voices are louder than ever. And this time, we are not just going after them. We are going after the entire system that protects them. The most daring plan yet. Over the next few days, Amoka and Zainab worked tirelessly in secret, crafting their most daring move yet. They gathered evidence of not only the bullying but also the school administration's complicity in covering up Tomowa's actions. They uncovered records of favoritism, including instances where Mr. Okoro had dismissed complaints against Tomowa and her friends. They compiled testimonies from other students who had been bullied, creating an irrefutable case. Their plan wasn't just about exposing Tomowa, it was about tearing down the web of corruption that had allowed her reign of terror to persist. As they finalized their preparations, Amoka felt a newfound sense of purpose. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every student who had been silenced, every voice that had been ignored. And this time, she wasn't afraid the fall of the mighty. The week leading up to the Bright Future Girls Academy annual award ceremony was a whirlwind of preparation and anticipation. Parents, teachers, and students alike were excited about the event, which was the highlight of the school year. But for Amoka and Zainab, it was more than just a ceremony, it was the perfect stage to expose the truth. Uncovering the evidence. Amoka and Zainab knew that to dismantle Tomowa's power, they needed more than testimonies and rumors. They needed irrefutable evidence. Enter Emeka, Zainab's tech-savvy cousin, a university student who specialized in cybersecurity. Meeting in the secrecy of Emeka's small, cluttered room, Zainab explained their plan. We need to access the school's archives, emails, financial records, and anything that can prove favoritism and cover-ups. Can you do it? Emeka smirked, pulling his laptop closer. I can do it, but it won't be easy. You're sure this is worth it? Absolutely, Amoka said firmly, her eyes resolute. Over the next few days, Emeka worked his magic. Using a combination of hacking tools and insider knowledge provided by Zainab, he managed to gain access to the school's email system and digital archives. What they found was worse than they imagined. There were emails between Tomowa's father, Chief Oledimeji, and the principal, Mr. Okoro, detailing how disciplinary actions against Tomowa and her friends were dismissed to preserve the school's reputation. Financial records showed suspicious donations from Chief Oledimeji, coinciding with decisions that favored his daughter. But the smoking gun came in the form of a series of deleted CCTV clips recovered by Emeka, showing Tomowa and her friends bullying various students over the years. Armed with this evidence, Amoka and Zainab began piecing together a video that would expose not just Tomowa, but the entire system enabling her reign of terror. The award ceremony. The school auditorium was packed with students, parents, and staff. The annual award ceremony was a grand affair, celebrating academic achievements, extracurricular excellence, and school pride. Banners hung from the walls, and the stage was decorated with flowers and lights. Tomowa and her friends sat in the front row, dressed to impress, their confidence restored after the assembly incident. Tomowa's father sat beside the principal, sharing a private laugh as they waited for the ceremony to begin. Behind the scenes, Amoka and Zainab sat in a dark corner of the control room, their hearts pounding as they finalized the upload of their video to the auditorium's projector system. "You ready?" Zainab whispered. Amoka took a deep breath and nodded. "Let's do this." The revelation. Midway through the ceremony, as Mr. Okoro prepared to hand out the Student Leadership Award, the auditorium lights dimmed. The large screen at the center of the stage flickered to life. At first, everyone thought it was a scheduled presentation. But as the video began to play, gasps filled the room. The video opened with a clip of Tomowa, Lola, and Bimbo laughing in the cafeteria, Tomowa's voice crystal clear. "I could say Amoka stole the school bus, and they'd probably believe me." The scene shifted to a recovered CCTV clip showing the trio vandalizing a locker, followed by another clip of them shoving a younger student in the hallway. Then came the damning emails, displayed one by one, between Chief Oladimeji and Mr. Okoro. "Chief Oladimeji, I trust you'll handle this quietly. We can't afford to have Tomowa's name tarnished." "Mr. Okoro, consider it done. The disciplinary report will be erased." The final segment of the video was a montage of testimonies from other students, recorded anonymously, describing years of bullying and the administration's failure to act. The room erupted into chaos. Parents shouted, demanding explanations. Teachers looked stunned, exchanging anxious glances. Students whispered furiously among themselves, some nodding in agreement with what they had just seen. Tomowa's father shot out of his seat, his face red with anger. "This is slander. Shut it off immediately," he roared. But it was too late. The damage was done. The fallout. By the end of the day, an emergency meeting was called by the school board. Under immense pressure from parents and community leaders, Chief Oladimeji was forced to resign from his position on the board. His influence over the school was officially severed. Mr. Okoro, the principal, was suspended indefinitely pending an investigation into the favoritism and cover-ups exposed in the video. As for Tomowa, Lola, and Bimbo, they were summoned to a disciplinary hearing. The evidence against them was undeniable, and they were stripped of all privileges, including leadership roles and access to extracurricular activities. The once fair trio found themselves isolated and powerless, their social status in the school reduced to nothing. Amoka's victory. Amoka and Zainab watched the fallout quietly, their emotions a mix of relief and triumph. For Amoka, the victory was bittersweet. She had never wanted to destroy anyone's life, but she knew that standing up for what was right sometimes came at a cost. As they walked through the school courtyard later that evening, Zainab turned to her friend. "You did it, Amoka. You stood up for yourself. For all of us." Amoka smiled faintly. "We did it together." Zainab grinned. "So, what's next for a voice from the shadows?" Amoka's smile widened. "Maybe it's time to sign my name." The story ends with the two friends walking into the sunset, their bond stronger than ever, knowing they had made a lasting impact on their school and each other. Rising from the ashes. The week following the award ceremony marked the dawn of a new era at Bright Future Girls Academy. The once toxic atmosphere began to shift as students, teachers, and parents started working together to rebuild trust and foster a more inclusive environment. At the heart of this transformation was Amoka, whose bravery had sparked a movement that no one could ignore. A symbol of resilience. Amoka's anonymous column, A Voice from the Shadows, had become a staple of the school newsletter, addressing issues that many had been too afraid to voice before. When the school's interim principal approached her to officially recognize her work, Amoka hesitated. "I'm not sure I'm ready for everyone to know it's me," she admitted to Zainab. "Amoka, you've already faced the worst they could throw at you," Zainab replied with a smile. "You've proven you're stronger than their hate. Signing your name now would only make it more powerful." With Zainab's encouragement, Amoka finally put her name on her next article. The new column, titled Rising from the Ashes, A Call for Change, was met with overwhelming support. Students began openly discussing their experiences, and the school started implementing new initiatives to promote kindness and accountability. Amoka's courage inspired others to find their own voices. Students who had once stayed silent about the bullying now spoke up, forming peer support groups and advocating for positive change. Zainab's leadership. Zainab, ever the bold and outspoken leader, caught the attention of the interim principal, who saw her potential to bring lasting change to the school. She was offered a position on the student council, a role that Zainab accepted with enthusiasm. Her first order of business was drafting a new anti-bullying policy, which included stricter consequences for harassment and a mentorship program for younger students. "No one should feel alone here," she declared during her first council meeting. "If we want this school to be the best, we need to make sure everyone feels like they belong." Zainab's initiatives quickly gained traction, earning her respect from both students and staff. She became a symbol of determination, proving that even those who had faced their own struggles could rise to lead and inspire. Tomowa's reflection. For Tomowa, Lola, and Bimbo, life at Bright Future was no longer the same. Once admired and feared, they now walked the halls unnoticed, their former allies avoiding them out of fear of association. Tomowa, stripped of her privileges and influence, found herself reflecting on her actions. Late one afternoon, she approached Amoka in the library. "I need to say something," Tomowa began, her voice hesitant. Amoka looked up from her book, her expression unreadable. I was wrong," Tomowa said, struggling to find the right words. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted to say I'm sorry." Amoka studied her for a moment before replying. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Tomowa. But I hope you mean what you're saying. Because if you do, you can start by being better." Tomowa nodded, her eyes filled with something that resembled regret. Lola and Bimbo, on the other hand, remained bitter, blaming Amoka and Zainab for their downfall. But their power over the school was gone, and they were forced to adapt to their new reality. A celebration of triumph. A month later, the school organized a special event to honor students who had made significant contributions to the academy. Among those recognized was Amoka. Her family attended the ceremony, sitting proudly in the front row. Her mother, dressed in a colorful Ankara print, beamed with pride as Amoka walked onto the stage to accept her award. Her father, usually reserved, clapped loudly, while her younger siblings waved excitedly from their seats. As Amoka stood at the podium, she addressed the audience with quiet confidence. "This award isn't just for me," she began. "It's for everyone who has ever felt unheard, unseen, or powerless. Change starts when we speak up, and I hope we all continue to make this school a place where everyone feels safe and valued." Her words were met with a standing ovation. A lasting bond. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Amoka and Zainab walked through the school grounds, reflecting on how far they had come. "We actually did it," Amoka said, a hint of amazement in her voice. Zainab grinned. "Of course we did. I never doubted us for a second." Amoka laughed softly. "Thank you, Zainab. For everything. I couldn't have done this without you." "And I couldn't have done it without you," Zainab replied. "We make a pretty good team, don't we?" As they walked past the basketball court, now filled with students laughing and playing together, Amoka felt a sense of peace. The scars of the past hadn't disappeared, but they no longer defined her. She and Zainab had turned their pain into purpose, creating a legacy that would outlast them. Hand in hand, they walked toward the future, stronger and more united than ever, knowing they had not only risen from the ashes but also helped others find the courage to do the same. The end.